Hi, I'm Phil Dvorak with Recovery Church Movement. Welcome to our first edition of Real Conversations presented by Studio RC, where we ask honest, unfiltered questions and we just have real conversations. Today's guest is Pastor Max Ingram from Recovery Church Online, and he's also a regular Studio RC segment contributor. And Pastor Max is a dear friend, and his passion for Jesus and the 12 steps is contagious, and I'm excited to have him on the show today. Welcome, Max.
Thanks so much. I couldn't be happier to be here. This is awesome. I'm very excited about this.
So Max, I just want to hit the ground running. I want us to have. I mean, I know you've been in recovery for a long time, and you're a follower of Jesus as I am, and that can be a difficult place at times because you go into the fellowships, you go into the rooms, and you bring up the name of Jesus, and you sometimes get some interesting reactions. But yet, when you're in the church and you start talking about some of the struggles we can have in recovery and the crazy thoughts that we might have, or just being honest, and sometimes the church doesn't necessarily react in the best way. Um, can you just talk a little bit about your experience with some of that struggle over the years?
One of the things that I have found but whether it was recovery or whether it was church, I didn't feel like I could be my full self. Um, in recovery meetings, you can talk about God. That's fine. I kind of joke, if you want to see the power of Jesus' name, just bring it up at a AA meeting, and like the atmosphere changes. People are good with you talking about God. Jesus is a little, pump the brakes there. But in the same way, if you go to a small group at church, it's not like you can talk about, the other day when I woke up dope sick, or I had the bed spins, and I used to steal from the convenience store, and they're like, they can't believe some of that. I think that they're being fully in recovery and fully in faith. There was a struggle to be able to fully experience that or express that in an environment. In the same way, you can't quote a Bible verse in a meeting, and it's probably not appropriate. In the same way, quoting the big book or the basic text in a church small group will seem out of place as well. So having that space where you can be fully in your recovery mindset as well as fully in that faith mindset is a place that it didn't really exist, and I'll give the plug, didn't really exist until Recovery Church. I love everything about Recovery Church. When you and I met, we were in lockstep almost instantly. We just found that pocket, like this is where I can be fully myself. And I feel like a lot of people who come to Recovery Church are able to experience that like, I kind of joke, you can share from the big book, the Bible, and throw in a swear all in 3 minutes. Now, we don't encourage the swear words, but it's the whole point of Recovery Church is that if you go to a meeting and then you come to Recovery Church, there are enough elements of it that it doesn't look foreign. Like this has elements of recovery. This looks familiar. But in the same sense, if you came from church into Recovery Church, there are enough elements of church that it doesn't look just like a meeting. And in the same sense, for the people who are coming from the meetings, that it doesn't just look like church, that there's this beautiful blending. And a lot of the folks that attend are just they feel this weight lifted, that they don't have to try to figure out which side that am I going to share from my recovery or my faith side. Yeah. There's just a blending, which is there's always been that tension about that. So
yeah, that tension. I mean, the church. I mean, obviously, I'm a church person. I love the church. I love the capital C church. I love the little church. I'm a church planter. I've been a pastor. I love the church. Sometimes we miss, and there's a beauty within the AA and NA and other 12-step fellowships that I think the church has thrown the baby out with the bathwater at times, and they've missed an opportunity. They've missed even lessons we could learn from these fellowships. I mean, I was meeting with a pastor who uh, really is a leader within a denomination, and a large denomination. And I said there are over 60,000 AA meetings in the United States, and you saw his eyes kind of opening up, and I'm on. Then you have CA, and then you have NA, and then you have, and I'm like, they're in literally every community in our nation, and they don't have all this structure and all this other stuff in place that sometimes, and it almost seems impossible when we talk to church people, and but something somehow these group of drunks, these addicts get together, and there's order to it, and there's beauty to it. And uh, I don't know, for me there's things the church can learn from these 12-step fellowships. um, have you given any thought to that? What do you think the church might be able to learn from the recovery fellowships?
Well, when I came to faith, and I came to faith, I was probably about 3 years sober, and I had a significant faith experience. And I remember thinking, the church, oh, I wish they had the 12 steps. They could really benefit from the 12 steps. And the more I've studied, both from the faith side as well as the recovery side, is that there's nothing in the steps that is antithetical to the Bible or the
Amen.
Bible's teaching. Now, the Bible is richer and fuller, and covers more things than the big book does, but the
Absolutely.
things in the big book, there's nothing that is against any biblical idea. And one of the things that the big book tries to do is it tries to open up the lane for those who struggle with the concept of God or a higher power. And it's not trying to uh, demote God. It's trying to kind of, if you're struggling with this, let's try to broaden your understanding so that you can come in and have this open mindedness, this willingness, that as you honestly approach this, that as you do that, you can discover some things, and maybe we take down some walls. We find that in desperation, people are open to doing things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise do. If you're at a bottom and you've hit your bottom in your addiction, you're pretty willing to do things, and you recognize, I can't do this. I've
Mhm.
tried to get sober on myself, I've tried to get clean by myself. I can't do it on my own. There,
Mhm.
and I need help. And so you're open to, what is this higher power? And even if you have never experienced faith or experienced God, you're wrestling with, what is this God thing? What is that? And I think anyone who has gone on that journey understands and appreciates the space being allowed to do that as you come to your conclusion. I think that sometimes the church doesn't always allow that space for people to work on it and figure it out, and instead kind of they speed ahead and are like, come on, don't you
Mhm.
know this? And a lot of people, they don't know it yet, and we get to help them and show them and point them, and it's pretty fun to watch as people it starts to click, and they're like, ooh,
Well,
okay.
I think the fellowships they do it very well, allowing that space. They allow people to come. And I was in a meeting just last week, and there was a crazy guy spouting off all sorts of insanity. And in the church world, we want to correct that immediately. We want to make sure and in the recovery world, and I understand that. I don't want people being led astray or anything like that. But in the recovery world, it's like we choose the journey more than immediate correction of the truth, and say in relationship we're going to be able to correct that truth, and we're going to be able to show that, and we're going to allow some space for people to figure out some of this. And we're not expecting people to come in who were walking the streets last night doing whatever they needed to do to just keep somewhat of a normal, and they're doing whatever it takes, and we all know what that is. And we're not going to expect them to hop in and share the meeting the next week. And the same thing, we're not expecting them to lead a church the next week. Um, but at the same time, we need to allow them time to internalize and figure out what it is they really do believe and not just say the right answer. Sometimes I think in church, it's like we're okay if people just come in and say the right answers and they say the prayer and they answer the questions right. And no, I want to see heart change. I want to see this transformation take place. And for most of the time and most of the journey, that for me that takes time. There are exceptions. There are these bright white light experiences, Damascus Road experiences, cathedral experiences, these things that happen to people that just radically shift their perspective, and encounter with the Holy Spirit, an encounter with the living God that many people have experienced. But even in Scripture, that's the exception to the rule. God typically was walking alongside the disciples, and most of the disciples, right up to the end, they didn't have it figured out. You get to the story. Jesus has died, and they still did not fully understand. Thomas, gets the moniker, as you like to say, of doubting Thomas, and he had walked with Jesus for years and did not fully understand that. And I love how I've heard you share the week in between. Can you give that kind of explain that a little bit? What you mean by recovery church is the week in between?
Fair enough. And one of the things you were saying that the rooms of recovery does do a great job of extending grace. Like it's not in
Yeah.
the business of you got to be right. You know, an old timer, long term sponsor would just kind of pat him on the back and say, "Okay, let's go get some coffee. You're good," and kind of let it go. In regards to Thomas, I this story um, of Thomas has been just a seminal story in regards to how I understand recovery church. But when Jesus came back and visited the disciples for the first time after his resurrection, he came into the locked upper room, he visited with the disciples, and he disappeared. For whatever reason, Thomas just wasn't there. And when Thomas comes back, they're like, "We've seen the Lord, we've seen Jesus." And Thomas is like, not so fast. I'm not going to believe till I touch his hands, so I feel his side. I'm just, I don't believe that. That's hard for me to believe. And so fast forward, and the scripture talks about 1 week later, upper room, locked door, Thomas is there, and Jesus appears again. And Jesus holds out his hand, and Thomas recognizes him, and he says, "My Lord and my God." And Thomas never wavers in faith ever again. What's lost, I think, sometimes in this story is there were disciples who had experienced Jesus as their Lord and their God. And they allowed Thomas, even in his doubt and even in his unbelief, to stay with them in the upper room for an entire week before he had my Lord and my God moment. And
So
I
good.
talk about Recovery Church being that week in between where we have people who have experienced Jesus as my Lord and my God, but there are still people who are, I'm not going to believe till I touch the hand. And then so we give that space for people to explore, to ask questions, to why is this different than the Native American gods and Mother Nature? And I mean, I feel that some of those questions today at rehab about this monotheistic God and talking about it, and it came down to this experiencing God's love. When I experienced Jesus's love in my life in about the 3 year mark of my sobriety, my life and my recovery and my everything changed. The arc of my career changed. I went from being a business person in sales into ministry, and the message that got through to me of God's love was so significant. I wanted other people to know it and share it with others. And I think that that's a message that changes lives, and it definitely changes lives in recovery. Because here's a group of people who don't always feel lovable. A
Mhm.
lot of people struggle with being lonely and feeling odd and didn't quite fit in. But there's something when you can get the message of love, that God's love is for even for you.
Yeah.
It just it's a game changer for sure.
Now, it's messy though. and the church, uh, the church struggles with mess. Now, my experience was I came to faith in a conservative church that met me in the middle of my mess, and so I really believe my journey was probably, it feels like in our culture at least, that is not most people's journey. I think most people's journeys was different than that. I had a church that in the middle of my mess came alongside me, and they loved on me, and which I think is unusual, and they put up with some mess. They allowed me to walk through some mess. Now, and I don't know if it was because I sinned a certain way and not a different way, but they accepted me. They accepted my sin, and not accepted my sin. That's the wrong way of saying it, but they accepted that I was on this journey, and they loved me enough until I could love myself and start taking these steps, and start allowing the Holy Spirit to convict me and change me, and they didn't compromise the truth, but they put love first. And I think sometimes we feel it's an either or, our truth warriors out there, which I am a, I want the truth, and but our truth warriors out there sometimes can feel like if we don't fight for the truth in this moment right now, somehow we're missing it, and then our lovers can feel like, well, oh man, we have to love them, uh, and it seems at times that um, I don't know, maybe there are some things about that the rooms, the fellowships of recovery can teach the church of the way that they respond with both love and truth. So
And I think in the rooms there's an expectation that there will be mess. I
mhm.
mean, that's it, people in early recovery are messy. That
Yeah.
just, the old timers used to call people early in recovery pigeons, and the reason is they flap their wings, they make lots of noise, and they poo all over the place. Like that was, you know, it's messy getting sober, and it's messy in the beginning. The beginning of faith can be messy as well, but I think the rooms are are particularly immune to the mess.
Yeah.
Last night I was at a meeting, and a woman shared, and she gave like a pause. She's like, the in the last 3 days I was in jail, and
Mhm.
no one flinched. Like like any other setting, someone says, I've been in jail the last 3 days, there's shock and awe and all. But like in the meeting, we're like, okay,
And your
okay,
point is?
like, keep going. We're with you. But that's the environment. Like when you share your fifth step. I've never heard somebody share. I shared something with my sponsor or a pastor, or priest, or whatever, and they were shocked.
Mhm.
Like like there's I like to tell people, especially if they struggle with doing that sharing of the personal inventory in the fifth step, that if you do the fifth step with somebody else, if there are words to describe what you've done, you're not the first person that's done it. You have not invented a new sin.
Amen.
And so there's not a shock and awe. And I think um sometimes by the time we get to the church, sometimes we're a little sanitized, we're a little cleaned up, and so someone swearing or a little messy is kind of like, woo, okay, all right, get back in the lane a little bit. and uh
Well,
and I
and honestly, I get that. I have 5 kids, and my kids come to recovery church at times, and there's times where I say, "Nah, you know what? I know who's sharing tonight," and maybe my oldest can, and I get that. I mean, we're the stereotypical. I was reading an article the other day, and they were bashing, uh, basically my family in the article. It's like we're a homeschool and Christian, 5 kids at home family, and I protect my kids, and we limit screen time, and try to do everything we can to prepare them and protect them, and people are, oh, you're sheltering. Yeah, I'm sheltering them from some crazy things in this world. And so I get that, when um we were first planning recovery churches, and we had the one in Lake Worth, and we started having childcare, and it was like all the kids had to walk through the cloud of smoke, and I wouldn't want my kids walking through the smoke, and so I understand some of this tension, and uh, but we allow, and when I've been a pastor of a normie church or a typical church, and sometimes we'll allow some horrible things to take place in regards to people speaking death and just rumors of each other, and talking trash, or they'll bash someone who's in leadership, or and horrible things, but then someone had a colorful word come out of their mouth, and that becomes more important, and it's like, well, wait a minute. No, that character defect that you're not willing to address, that's actually could be more harmful to my children than dropping a cuss word is going to be for my 15-year-old to hear. What's more damaging is that, wait a minute, no one's addressing that this person is being emotionally abusive to their wife, or no one's addressing that they're not honoring this relation, whatever it might be, or speaking bad about other people publicly, and not addressing that and leaving that at the altar, not following the biblical principles. And so for me, um, I don't want either happening necessarily, but I'm going to choose the issues of the heart more than maybe how some of these things on the surface are being expressed. And it's not easy. It's a mess. I get it. I understand that, uh, that, it can be uncomfortable. And one of the things I found is, uh, the first time, say, a pastor or a church person steps into the rooms of AA or NA or any 12-step fellowship, their expectation at first is it's going to be those people, whoever those people are. Their expectation, it's going to be some crazy situation, and then all of a sudden they realize, wait a minute, it's us. It's not those people. Yeah, but it's the same people that we're dealing with. It's people, and we're all struggling with this. And we all have the mess. Some are better at hiding the mess. Some are better at other things with the mess. But my family is broken. But we were in denial for years of some of what that brokenness was. And so for me, uh, one of the things the church can learn from the rooms is actually bringing to light and talking about the brokenness, and not just hiding it and putting a bright white smile on that everything is good. No, we're gonna address it, and so we're gonna call a spade a spade. And you're sitting in a meeting, and you say something, someone might literally call you out to your face in front of everyone in an AA meeting. In the church, they're not going to do that so much. And I think healthy confrontation that happens within the rooms could be a good thing the church could learn from, and it's probably more important than worrying about uh, that the person who was struggling with whatever the way they dressed today, or the words that came out of their mouth.
Well, I think our value for Recovery Church of being raw and authentic, the reason it speaks so much to our Recovery Church family is authenticity is so important and so needed and so desired. And when you have the addict and alcoholic community, they have some of the best BS meters going. Like, as many former liars, thieves, and cheats, um, there's an understanding of when someone's trying to run something on you and when someone's being real. And I think that authenticity, that speaks volumes to them, and they're willing to listen to something that is authentic, even if it has some sharp edges at places, because that speaks to their soul authenticity. And I think that goes true. That's true in church as well. When you have, whether it's a pastor or a speaker who's is not is able to lower down their guard and is not always polished and is able to show about some of their shortcomings and have that authenticity, that really helps the faith community as well. And I think the faith community embraces that. I think in recovery, it's probably in faith it should be essential as well, but in
Mhm.
recovery it's essential in order to communicate the message that authenticity needs to be present for sure.
And I don't think you're saying, or I would ever say, that we're wanting people to stay in that brokenness. I mean, that's the whole point of recovery, is we want to see lives transformed. And which kind of brings me maybe to the next kind of questions or thoughts is, um, I, I get pushback from the church at times. I get pushback from the rooms at times, but
Mhm.
my lane has been more in the church world. And I get pushback and objections and, people being all sorts of different things from, well, when are you going to graduate from going to meetings, and they're just addicted to AA now. I've literally been called a heretic, and had people write documents and send them to churches about how what we're doing is, I'm a cult leader at this point. And so uh, maybe let's respond to some of those objections that maybe you've heard. I mean, one of them, what's some of the objections you've heard, and some thoughts about it?
It's funny because I feel uniquely positioned that I'm often advocating for recovery in the church and advocating for the church in recovery. So I've been on both sides of this. I think that in regards to the church, one of the things is, why do you continue to identify as an alcoholic?
Yeah, good
Um,
question.
and interestingly, and this is even controversial sometimes in the rooms of recovery, the big book talks about being recovered,
Yep.
ed, that it's a past tense. And sometimes even saying that can be controversial in the rooms. But why identify as an alcoholic? And one of the things, I was having one of these conversations, and God just gave me the words because they were not my words. We were having a discussion. And when someone identifies, hi, my name is Max, and I'm an alcoholic, there is a freedom that comes from identifying as an alcoholic.
Mhm.
And someone said, well, isn't that always backwards looking? And I think in the context of recovery, when you uh, identify as an addict or an alcoholic, it's actually forward moving.
Mhm.
The big book says we will not, we do not wish to close the door, shut the door on the past, nor will we forget it, because it becomes valuable for us. But we're moving forward, we're looking forward. And actually, by being an addict or an alcoholic, the real truth is we are a recovered addict or a
Mhm.
recovered alcoholic. And in that, like, we're forward looking. And it's the old debate, like, uh, am I a sinner saved by grace, or am I a saint who sins? You
Mhm.
know, like, some of it I think is semantics,
I
but I
agree.
think in the rooms there is an identification, a connection. The
Yeah.
first time someone identifies that, it's the first time. It's much like someone coming to faith and recognizing that they're a sinner, that they fall short, and that they need God. Saying that they're an alcoholic is sort of a breakthrough. Saying they're an
Absolutely.
addict is a breakthrough moment, because it takes humility to admit that, because so long we've been fighting that. And it's an important thing to be able to say, I'm an addict or an alcoholic, and it is a forward moving thing. But I think that sometimes church folks are like, well, why do you keep identifying as that? There is greater freedom and greater forward thinking in that identification than people who might not be in the recovery circles could ever appreciate or imagine.
Well, sometimes I'll get the pushback of, and it's like you're speaking a curse over yourself, and I think that's a misunderstanding. I don't know anyone who's speaking, who is saying it in the way of, like I would when my self-talk was negative, and I was saying I'm worthless, or I'm unlovable, or I'm never going to amount to anything, or any of that negative self-talk or lies that I might tell myself, or let the enemy tell me. This isn't the We're not allowing the enemy to call us something like that and put this curse or this identity on us. That I don't believe that is what the point here is. the reality is there's a lot of different layers here, but I think the reality of it is when I say, "Hey, I'm Phil and I'm an alcoholic," a few different things happen. One is like you said, I get humbled. The other day when my older daughters were in a recovery church meeting in an open share afterwards, and they were sitting in the open share, and I realized, oh wait, I'm going to introduce myself, and I started thinking, how am I going to introduce myself? My kids are in here, and it started to go through my head. I'm like, this is the first time they're going to hear me in this setting refer to me, refer their father referred to that in that way. What message is that telling them? And so I understand that tension of what people in the church are saying, but what the goal is. So a few things. One of the person who was sitting next to me on the other side was just starting to accept that they had a problem with alcohol. And for them to hear Pastor Phil say, "Hey, I'm Phil, I'm an alcoholic," was, "Oh, I'm not alone." And so it helped that newcomer recognize, wait a minute, there is hope, because he knows I'm sober. He knows I live a new life, an abundant life. He's met my family. He sees that and he's like, wait a minute. Well, Phil is one of us? Oh, I want what he has. And so it helps the newcomer. And so part of it is about that being that hand and feet of Jesus and putting out there and letting them know, no, I've struggled with that. Now we can get in semantics of the wording, and I understand that, but in the simplest form is just, come on, let's just say this so this newcomer understands, because it also cuts through the denial. Most people early in their journey, from my experience, my own journey, it takes a lot to accept that I have a problem, and that that problem has anything to do with alcohol, or a substance. I had lots of other problems in my mind. And I was willing to take medicine and go through all sorts of things. But wait, if I just stop drinking that drink at night, it might solve some of this problem. It took a lot to accept that maybe I am one of those people. Um, and we need to, the cunning, baffling nature that tries to keep us from surrendering and saying, I can't do this on my own. And when we say, I can't do this, but he can, there's something powerful in that journey about being willing to speak the words, God, I, I can't anymore. I'm an alcoholic. This alcoholism is causing my life to be crazy. It's insane what's going on. There's power in speaking those words in a good way. It's not what I think most Christians are hearing as, oh, you're speaking a curse on you, or you're looking back and on the plot. No, that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to look forward and help newcomers come along with us to this new abundant life.
Well, and I think that people of faith, when they hear alcoholic, they're like, that's a negative word.
Hmm.
I think in the rooms of recovery, alcoholic's a positive word. And so, and some of that's perspective, but you're like, why are you identifying as that negative thing? Well, no, actually, like I'm now part of this club. I'm part of this group of people that support me and encourage me and are helping me because of that identifier.
Yeah.
Not and when I like when I identify in that way, I'm not thinking of hangovers, throw up, bed spins, like all the negative things. I think uh, the freedom that comes because of this.
Yes.
That and so like I don't when I share, hi, my name is Max, I'm an alcoholic. I'm filled with hope. I'm filled with encouragement. I'm getting excited about what I'm going to get to share, because if you've experienced the spiritual awakening as described in the 12th step, some call it reborn. People of faith might even call it born again. There's a lot of overlap there. When you've experienced that, these are moments of hope. These are
Yep.
moments of encouragement, like, hey, you can get this too. You can have the, you can be loved by God. You can be sober. You can be clean. You can have this life that is different than your life today. All because you're through a higher power, which we recognize as God and Jesus. As you recognize that higher power coming into your life, you can have a different life and stop using drugs and alcohol in a way that you could never do on your own. You need this power source that's going to come in. And this power source, what's amazing about it is it's also going to do this transformational work in you. And that transformational work, it's not like it's your best self. Like when we think of like the Saul Paul conversion, that's what our understanding of being born again is, and that's what is described when it says having had a spiritual awakening, having had that spiritual experience as the result. It says in the big book of for AA and for NA, it says a result, but it's a significant result. You're going to have life transformation as a result of this. And when you have that and you still identify with what gave you that freedom, there's just a lot there. I'm going to jump just in a slightly different direction. You asked some of the things, and it goes along with what we're talking about. Is another objection is, why don't you just need Jesus? And sometimes we talk about the one step versus the 12 steps. All you need is Jesus. Why do you need 12 steps? And that's an interesting approach because until the 12 steps, if you were an addict or an alcoholic, your prognosis was not good. Your prognosis was jails, institution, and death. Those were recovery was not on the table. And that's not to say that Jesus wouldn't remove it from somebody over here and over there, and it absolutely people were kind of struck sober, for lack of a better word, but it was something that wasn't. How do you replicate that? How do you do that? And that's one of the things that in the doctor's opinion in the forward, that they bring in this approach of how this is a disease. And I think some church people are like, it's not a disease, it's a sin problem. Well, interestingly, if you approach alcoholism as exclusively a sin issue, then all you need is Jesus, because Jesus will take care of the sin issue. Are there sins involved in alcoholism and addiction?
Of course.
Absolutely. However, going through the 12 steps, it's like one of the most intense forms of discipleship you could ever go through. You're doing a personal inventory of yourself. You're making amends to people for the mistakes and seeking forgiveness and for all the lies and you're doing all of that. The format of the 12 steps, it's crazy. And one of the things it tells us is our past becomes our greatest asset. Well, how does that happen? It's because God redeems our past. We start out with this pile of poo, for lack of a better word, because we're liars, we're cheats, we're thieves, we're addicts, we're alcoholics. We got all this bad stuff behind us. We filter it through the steps, and then through that process, God redeems it, and then we got these gold coins at the end of the process. And it now becomes something that we can share and we can encourage other people. This whole process is a discipleship process that helps you to encourage other people. I was there, but you can stay sober. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And we're not going to be able to process every one of the objections, in depth. I mean, you're a new creation, yes, we understand this. And I'm not saying that AA or any of the 12-step fellowships are perfect. And I'm certainly not saying my local church is perfect. And I don't think any pastor of any church would say their church family and the church system and everything they have is perfect. But one thing I think that the church is not aware of is sometimes churches have looked at AA and the fellowships as almost the enemy, and not realized that we have a comrade, we have an ally in AA if we're fair about it and honoring about it, that we can walk alongside these fellowships, and when we understand that, we miss amazing opportunities. The church isn't aware is right now in our culture, AA is under attack because it's too God-centric for some of the way the culture is going. And so there's people out there who say, oh, I don't want anything to do with AA because they're all about God and that it's Christianity in disguise. And then the church the church will be like, oh, well, AA says this whole higher power stuff, so I don't want anyone involved in AA. And the church really is misunderstanding what AA is and the beautiful opportunity that many of these 12-step fellowships are. When the text says that God either is or he isn't, may you find him now. And it's very clear as you dive through the AA literature and history that it is definitely pro Jesus and pro God, and that it is a great opportunity for people to position their heart, position their way of life, to be willing to at least hear the message of the gospel, to at least be positioned in such a way that they're open to that, in its purest form. And we actually need more Christians who are a part of AA, and more Christians who are long-term recovery in those rooms. And so when that newcomer raises their hand and says, "Hey, I need a sponsor," we don't need to not be there. We need to be there and be those sponsors and walk alongside. And when they ask us, "Hey, how did you get sober? What was it like for you to surrender over to your higher power? What did that look like for you?" And we're able to share about Jesus to this person who is desperate. What an amazing opportunity. And I think the church at times misses that, and misses this beautiful opportunity we have in the fellowships. So can you say anything about that? Any thoughts about that?
I do. One of the things that's great is one of the things I love about Recovery Church, and we are the bridge. We're the bridge to church, we're the bridge to recovery, and we're not in competition with either of them. Like, we're partnering with local churches. We want people to go to their home church, and Recovery Church just allows them to be fully share in their recovery and in their faith, and then go be active in your a home church on Sunday. Be active in your home group for recovery, and we get to be in the middle and help with some of these misunderstandings, help with the partnerships, help further along the opportunities that there are, and to kind of help show that the values are much closer aligned than not aligned, and that we get to be that bridge for both sides, and that we're not trying to take anyone from anywhere. We're trying to encourage. We're trying to help. The ultimate thing is we have, as we say, 12 steps, one goal. There are 12 steps with this one goal of a spiritual awakening. That's the goal. We want people to experience Jesus and God in this significant way where their
Amen.
lives are transformed. And we get to sit in the middle and say, oh, yeah, church is over there, AA and NA is over there, and we're here in the middle partying with both. And so we get
Amen.
to partner with both, and we will be the bridge that helps connect the church and recovery together, because recovery also stays pretty firm. They have a fence, sort of a wall to protect themselves from the church, and the church doesn't always understand recovery, and we're in the middle saying, hey, no, we can be together. Like, there
Amen.
is overlap here, and that's exciting to be a part of. I love being a part of Recovery Church. I love what we're doing at Recovery Church. I love that Recovery Church is growing. Why are we growing? Because there is a need for this. People are hungry for what is going on at Recovery Church. And I think that's just exciting. And so sometimes you have to invite people from, whether it's recovery community or the church community, to come in and see what's happening. Come along for the ride. It is awesome. And if you stick around for just long enough to see a little life transformation, woo! It's, it,
No, it
that's,
is. It is beautiful what God's doing. I don't think, I don't even know how many years ago now when we finally started saying yes, but I had no idea we would be doing what we're doing now and seeing the lives transform that we're seeing now. And Jesus says, judge them by their fruit. And right now I am seeing such amazing fruit of people who didn't know Jesus, who are lost in their addiction, who now are living sober lives. Families are being reunited, who are fully in love with Jesus and leading others to Jesus. Um, that's what I want to see. I mean, last night at just our one RC, I think there were 6 or 8 people baptized, just that one. And every single night, there are multiple RCs that are meeting across this country. And it's just beautiful being a part of what God is doing. And it's going to be awesome to see what he does next. And so, Pastor Max, I just want to thank you for your dedication to Recovery Church. Can you just plug just a little bit, like Recovery Church online, what that looks like, the services that you guys, the different service opportunities, worship opportunities that you offer right now?
Love to. As the pandemic hit, and I oversaw 2 physical locations, everyone went online. That was a thing. But as the pandemic waned, everyone kind of went back. But when we developed this community of people from all over the world. Literally, we have international people and all this in this community, and we designated our community as the Recovery Church online campus, and we meet 3 times a week. We meet Monday night at 7 o'clock Eastern. I have to now say Eastern because people are coming from so many different parts of the country and the world. But we have about an hour and a half service on Monday night, and it includes a message. It includes a time of sharing. It includes worship. One Monday a month we have communion, and so and that's just we have this great full experience. Then on Wednesdays at 12 noon, again Eastern time, we have more of looks like a meeting. We have somebody who does a lead, and then we have an open time of sharing, and that's an hour. And then on Thursday nights, again at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have a Bible study, and the Bible study is a life recovery Bible study, and we go through recovery topics. And so, even if you have a physical location, we are a great supplement if you can't get out to it, or you need a meeting. Like we are there 3 days a week, and we're working on content with the Studio RC so that there is digital content that you can access, fresh content we're pretty much almost up to every day of the week, and we're working on. And then that's not to say any of the things that we already have cataloged. We have a lot of material, so there are a lot of resources that are here just for you. Like if you're in recovery, if you're trying to figure it out, we have those resources and would love for you to take advantage of.
We want to make sure that people have an opportunity. And so, like when I'm traveling, I can listen to the podcast. I can download the resources. I can on any of them, Spotify, YouTube. They're on all of them, and it's just another opportunity to connect, another opportunity to learn, another opportunity to grow. And so, Max, I want to thank you for taking the lead with that and being an integral part for everything we do at Recovery Church. And so, but I'd just like to close out here. So at Recovery Church now, well, before we close out, Max, do you have anything like burning that you just want to make sure that we share during this time right now?
We covered a lot of ground, and I as our first time doing this, I think that this hopefully those watching it have enjoyed it and got some information, have been encouraged, and we look forward to finding additional creative ways that we can bring you content and encouragement for both your recovery and your faith. So this has been great, Pastor Phil. I appreciate your leadership and being able to follow your lead and being part of your team. It is an honor and a pleasure for me, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. And at Recovery Church, we say here 12 steps, one goal. And with that, I want to thank everyone who's listened. And if you need more information, please go to our website, recovery.church, or give us a phone call. We love to support you and walk alongside you in this journey of faith and recovery. God bless and stay sober.